We just hit 18,000 subscribers. How cool is that? Big thanks to all of you who subscribe to this channel, and to celebrate, we're going to do a little Q&A. I made a post on the JDstucks Instagram asking you to submit your questions to ask me about the layout. This is also unscripted, so you're going to get maybe less of the presenter Jason and more of just the raw, off-the-cuff, say whatever comes to mind Jason. What could go wrong? So sit back and relax as we answer your questions right now on Jason's O-Gauge Trains. Before we begin, I have to share with you a mysterious package arrived in the mail earlier this week from Trains.com. I was not quite sure what was in the box. I didn't remember ordering anything from Trains.com recently, so I opened it up, and inside is a little figure of Scott Griggs, the owner of Trains.com. Not what I was expecting, but it is a fun little gift and a great segue for me to remind you that if you're shopping for trains online, be sure to check out Trains.com. They carry new and used trains from all scales, all manufacturers, and if you shop at Trains.com using the affiliate link in the description of this video, or simply use promo code JDstucks at checkout, you will be supporting this channel and you will get $10 off your next order of $50 or more. That's promo code JDstucks for $10 off of your next online order of $50 or more at Trains.com. That's Trains with a Z. Scott Griggs doesn't talk like that. So let's dive into these questions. If you missed your chance to ask a question, no worries. Why don't you ask one in the comment of this video, and we can do a second Q&A in the near future. And yes, I printed out your questions because I am old and that's how I do things. All right, question number one, which technically wasn't asked by anybody, surprisingly, but it's always asked every video I post. Someone in the comment section asks this: what are the dimensions of your layout, and do you have a schematic for it? Well, first of all, the layout measures 33 feet long across the long back wall. And once it reaches the right corner of the room, the peninsula begins, and that is roughly 24 feet in length. Now, the width of this layout is a little complicated. It starts out at 9.5 feet wide, transitions to 9 feet wide, goes back to 9.5 feet wide, and eventually expands to 12 feet wide. Yes, there is a schematic for the layout as well. Here's a picture of the lower level reverse loop and storage tracks. Trains take a switch from the middle level and they ramp down to this hidden lower level. There's enough room to store 2 full-length trains and still have a free track for a train to reverse itself. Here's the schematic for the middle portion of the layout, which includes 3 loops and the peninsula roundhouse area. And finally, here is the top loop. It features 2 loops, one really big one small loop, and it does have the option to reverse itself on this upper loop. You also get to the upper loop by taking a switch from the middle level to the top. Mad Trains asks, what got you into trains? Well, trains have been part of my life my entire life. I can't remember any moment in my life, in my memory, where trains and model trains weren't part of that journey. I was literally born into running my dad's train set, the one that he had from when he was a kid. As soon as I could reach out and grab things, he was teaching me how to move the transformer to make the train move. I actually have pictures and videos of him showing me how to do that. I don't think I was able to walk at that time. I was just fascinated with trains. As a kid growing up, we saw real ones all the time where I lived, and my parents had church friends who helped build layouts for me. I was going to my library all the time and renting out the TM books and videos and getting inspiration of the people who had giant layouts. It just inspired me. I just never had a time in my life where this was not in it. It's a lifelong hobby, truly. I am 33 years old. Model trains have been in my life all 33 years. Jacob Stein 726 asks, what was your first train? Do you still have it? Yes, I do. Let me grab it. It's this little guy, a Lionel 2016 steamer. This came out probably at some point in the 50s, maybe early 60s. One of the cool things about it, when I was a kid, I really wanted a train that had a smoking whistle. I had no trains that had smoking whistles, so I think one of my birthday or Christmas presents My mom took this train to a train store and got them to install a smoke unit in it. And the smoke unit still works. This train still works. I run it a couple times a year. And this is the train where, you know, if the house was on fire and you only had time to run in and grab one train, this would be it. Because this was Genesis. And if I had to start all over, I might as well start with the one that began it all. Jim Gam, the train man, asks, what's your favorite railroad and what is your all-time favorite engine? Well, my favorite railroad shouldn't be much of a secret because it's filling a whole bunch of the camera right now. Norfolk Southern is my favorite railroad, particularly Norfolk Southern from the mid-90s to like around 2015, 2016, you know, before all the precision scheduled railroad stuff. That's really the Norfolk Southern that I love. As far as my favorite engine is concerned, that's a tough one, but there's usually three that pop into my mind. One was the Lionel 2016 engine that I just showed you because that was the one that started it all. The other one is the Norfolk Southern OCSF units. I have two of those sets on the layout. That's just one of my favorites. I think it's beautiful. It's my favorite railroad. It's my channel logo. That's one of my favorites. And then the other one that is a favorite that has a lot of sentimental value is my first New York Central Hudson that I got. I got that as a high school graduation gift, which was a surprise for my dad. And that was my first MTH Premier Line steam engine. I love the Hudsons. They're like my favorite steam engine probably. That one has a lot of sentimental value to me. So I don't know. Those three, in no particular order, are my favorites. Kyle Chung 2 asks, what started you to love Norfolk Southern in the first place? Well, where I grew up in northern Ohio, the nickel plate line that eventually became Norfolk and Western, which eventually became Norfolk Southern, ran right through my hometown. So I would see trains quite often going through my hometown carrying coal, auto racks for the most part, and a few other trains would go through on a daily basis. But then we also had a boat on the Vermilion River, and that is where that same ex-nickel plate line would intersect with the Norfolk Southern Chicago line. It was Conrail throughout the 90s and then became owned under Norfolk Southern. So we would go and have weekend trips on the boat, and I would see, you know, countless Norfolk Southern trains. It's just what I grew up with. It's what I grew up seeing, and that's the railroad I wanted to model. You can actually see in this photo, this is the nickel plate line on the single track, and in the background is the Chicago line double track main line. I still go here all the time for rail fanning. It's one of my favorite places to go, period. Kev Teague asks, when will our wives want to play trains with us?
Bruh.
Yeah, don't hold your breath, bud. I do not expect my wife to participate in or take any interest in the trains. This is a very niche hobby. I don't expect her to quite understand the craziness or my love for this hobby, but she does understand that it gives me great joy and that this is like a happy place for me. I always just tell her, hey, you know where I am. I would rather be in the basement building the train layout and running trains than being out doing something crazy and irresponsible. But the short answer is they're probably never going to want to play trains with us. Keep her happy so that you can have your time to play with the trains on your own time. Model Train Fan asks, what's a dream steam engine model you'd like to own? Well, fortunately for me, I really own every steam engine I ever hoped I would own. I have several in my roundhouse that if I never got another steam engine, I would be pretty content. But I do have one on pre-order. It's the Lionel Legacy Scale Polar Express Berkshire. I bought that engine once before. I sold it pretty quickly because I didn't have a legacy base. I wasn't running it, and I regretted it pretty much right away. So I do have a Polar Express Berk on order, and there is another New York Central Hudson that I've had my eye on for more than a year. It's a MTH PS3 Hudson, centipede tender, skull and disc drivers, and it has kind of the matte black smoke box with smoking whistle. There's been one for sale at the last 2 Yorks. Haven't pulled the trigger. And that transitions us pretty nicely into the next question. M. Slicks Trains, what do you have on pre-order? Well, I just mentioned the Polar Express. I also have the Polar Express observation car ordered with that. I think I have a bunch of Atlas Berwicks on order that are supposed to arrive pretty soon. And I also just placed an order for 2 of the new Atlas Premier Norfolk Southern -9s that I've been waiting for, well, for a long time. There could be other items, but I forget. Sometimes it just shows up, and then I'm like, ugh, that's gonna be some money. Cale Haney asks, what is one locomotive or piece of rolling stock that you have always wanted? Again, I have most of the items that I dreamed about as a kid. There were things that I had to pass up and say no to when I was younger, didn't have enough money, didn't have a job. But over the last few years, I've been able to hunt down most of the items that I really wanted in the collection. But there are always still things on my wish list that I'm bugging the manufacturers to make. I am still begging Atlas to make JB Hunt intermodal containers. Think they're working on the licensing. That would be great if they were, because there are so many people who want those containers. That's a wish list item, and along those lines, I would love to see somebody make O-scale spine car sets, like a 3-car spine car set. If Atlas would do it, that would be the best, because it would be die cast, and they just make the best O-scale rolling stock. MTH made a spine car set in the late 90s. I do own that one. It's decent, but it's not true scale proportions, and the big Atlas 50-foot intermodal containers don't fit on those. K-Line made some spine cars as well. Similar story to MTH. They look decent, but they're not true scales. And those were made years ago as well. We're due for somebody to make a nice scale spine car set. Looking at you, Atlas. Stars Geo asks, are you planning to attend Fall York? Yes, I am. At least I have booked a hotel and have made travel plans to do that, but you never know what kind of challenges life might throw at you. But as of right now, yes, I'm planning to go to October York, and I think they're doing another one of the Q&A panels for us lowly YouTubers, and I think I'm supposed to participate in that as well. So if you're going to Fall York, I should see you there. Dennis asks, do you have any scenes in mind you wish you had room for on this layout, but don't? Yes and no. Technically, this layout is like my dream layout. When I was a kid, if you told me this was going to be my future layout, I would have fallen over with excitement and happiness. I would have just passed out. That being said, your mind's always expanding on what you have. So I would love to have a basement where I could not only have this layout, but I could have a giant 2-track double main line going around the perimeter of the room, and a scene on that perimeter loop would be to recreate my favorite spot to watch trains, which is in Vermilion, Ohio, where I mentioned I fell in love with Norfolk Southern. This bridge right here on the Vermilion River is my favorite place to see trains cross. Ever since I was a kid, I would see trains fly over this bridge. And this photo is taken, one, by probably my favorite photographer, Lisa, because she takes photos in the Vermilion area all the time. They're always my computer desktop backgrounds. I would love to recreate this scene on a future layout. And a question I almost forgot to answer. O-Gauge Freddy asked, of all the Norfolk Southern Heritage units, which one is your favorite? Well, it's the Southern Heritage unit. There's a lot of really great paint schemes out there for the Norfolk Southern Heritage units, but when this one came out, it instantly became my favorite. For some reason, I just think the green and white is beautiful. And I've seen this one in person quite a few times. And again, that's one of the other reasons why I love that photo that Lisa took. It's my favorite Norfolk Southern Heritage unit in my favorite place to watch trains. So there's your answer, the Southern Heritage unit. Stosh is Rollin' Cole asks, how does one get an invite to TrainAPalooza? If you don't know, TrainAPalooza is an event that I host every year. We've done it 4 years in a row now. I invite the Detroit three-railers and a bunch of my friends from YouTube and across the hobby to have basically a weekend filled with model trains. We go visit other people's layouts, we run trains here, we go to train stores. It is a train fest, hence the name TrainAPalooza. How do you get invited to it? Well, everyone who gets invited is either a close friend of mine or a close friend of somebody else who's invited. So if we don't have any connection, we've never talked before, might not get an invite to TrainAPalooza. But what I hope TrainAPalooza does is inspire other people to host something similar in their hometown and invite the people that they're friends with in the hobby. And you could document it and make it a huge event as well. TrainAPalooza started the first year with like 25 people, and now we invite over 100. Big growth in just 4 years. We're on to the second page. Are you bored yet? Here's a train running by to keep you entertained. Okay, back to the questions. Nathan16 asks, how much rolling stock do you have? That's a complicated question. I have freight and passenger cars all over the place. On the layout, on shelves. Some are still stored away. Some are still at my parents' house at the old layout that I haven't brought here. I don't have an exact count, but I do have a rough count, and I believe it is a bit over 500 pieces of rolling stock in passenger cars. That may seem like a lot, but trust me, it's not bragging. There are people who have 5, even 10 times as many pieces of rolling stock as I have. But it's a nice collection, and keep in mind, I've been collecting my entire life. I'm 33 years old. That's 33 years of collecting. M. Warfel95 asks, do you plan on weathering your trains? Not right now. Maybe in the future. It's a slippery slope. I feel like once I start one, I'm gonna wanna do everything. Kind of have a lot of stuff already. So I think I wanna complete this layout, then maybe I'll consider weathering some trains. The Secondhand Overland asks, of the railroads now under the Norfolk Southern banner, which is your favorite and why? Well, I'm assuming this means any of Norfolk Southern predecessor railroads that merged and eventually became part of Norfolk Southern. The two that come to mind are New York Central and Conrail. At least that's how I feel right now. That changes sometimes. I also like the Nickel Plate Road a lot, but it seems like if it's not a Norfolk Southern locomotive, I'm very drawn towards Conrail and New York Central. Oh, now we have a deep question. 249 Fitzy says, what keeps you interested in the hobby? It's lost its magic for me the last few years. Prices. So what he says, prices. Prices have apparently deterred him from enjoying the hobby. Now I'll admit, prices increasing over the last few years doesn't help things. It's already a pretty expensive hobby. You don't have to be a rich person to enjoy this hobby, but some of these prices are getting out of the reach of the middle class. So I think you do have a valid point about the pricing really deterring some people from enjoying the hobby or getting into the hobby. Now that being said, what keeps me interested in the hobby? There are countless things. For one, I watch other people's YouTube videos for inspiration. I scour the internet. I'm in a bunch of different groups on the internet that I see other people's layouts, which give me inspiration. Real trains inspire me as well. I still like to go a rail fan in Ohio every now and then when I'm home. Making these YouTube videos keeps me interested. But I will say this, I don't ever come down here and run the trains if I don't feel like it. I never feel forced to make a YouTube video. I never feel forced to run the trains or buy a train. And I think that's one of the reasons why this has worked for me long term. I don't know why, but when I started this channel over 15 years ago, my dumb little 18-year-old brain somehow was smart enough to say, don't ever make a video if your heart's not in it and you're not passionate about it. Kept that philosophy with everything else I do in the layout, and it's worked for me. Sam's Trains asks, what was the hardest part about preparing your basement for your train layout? Well, first of all, when I bought this house and I moved in, this basement wasn't finished. In fact, it looked kind of more like a dungeon. So the first thing I had to do was finish the darn thing, which involved a whole lot of stuff. I installed backflow valves to prevent water from coming into the house. I had to re-level the driveway to keep water from pooling towards the house. Thank God I made great friends with some people in the Detroit Three-Railers, especially Charlie and Mark. They helped me frame this basement. They taught me how to do electrical, how to do the lights. We painted the ceiling. We hung the door to the laundry room. That was my COVID project. I would have never been able to have gotten that done if I didn't have all the extra time because of COVID and I didn't have the help of my friends Charlie and Mark. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. And I mean, I built a basement made for this train layout. It's perfect. Rail Chief 74 asks, when can we expect to see your next layout update? Well, a funny thing has been happening with my layout updates. The layout update I'm on coincides with how many subscribers I've recently hit. So when I hit 15,000 subs, layout update 15 came out. Then I hit 16,000 subs, layout update 16 came out. I just hit 18,000 subs, so that probably means that layout update 18 is coming. I'm trying to keep that kind of momentum going, you know? Just keep the channel steadily growing, which reminds me, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. I'd appreciate it. Adam Medicus asks, if you had to put a dollar amount on all train-related items in your collection, what's your guess? I don't want to think about that. Even if I knew the exact dollar amount, I don't think I'd want to share it publicly either. Just say this, you can do a rough estimate of what it all costs down here. When you consider I have over 500 pieces of rolling stock, nearly 100 command and control steam and diesel engines. Factor in the track, the electronics, the average prices, it's up there. But again, I'm 33 years old. I have been involved in this hobby my entire life. This collection did not pop up in a couple of years. This is more than 3 decades worth of collecting. And the final question, and probably my favorite one on this entire list, the Kisco Falls Railroad asks, how has model railroading changed your life? As I said before, I can't imagine model trains not being in my life because it's been there since I was born. Core memory I share of my dad before he passed away when I was very young. So it's a connection to him. Then my stepdad, who I consider him my dad, he helped me build layouts as a kid. He surprised me with trains. He supported me in the hobby. My mom really did too. Therapeutic, relaxing, been a tremendous benefit to my life. And it's only gotten better in recent years, thanks to my YouTube videos. Some of the recognition I've gotten from doing YouTube has opened some opportunities for me in the hobby, whether it's speaking on a panel or getting invited to an event, but mainly it's the friends I've made these last few years. I really didn't have friends in the hobby growing up. You know, everyone's into trains as a kid, but as you get older, most of the people fade away from the train. And then there's me, the crazy guy who just keeps taking it to the next level. And I really didn't have friends in the hobby. And then I started meeting people, a few people in college, and then around the time that COVID happened is when I really started making some great friends in the Detroit Three-Railers, other YouTubers. Now some of these people are my best friends, and we get to share this hobby together. It makes it more special to enjoy. It's just really hard for me to put into words what a positive impact this hobby has had on my life. And that's why I make these videos. I try to promote the hobby. I try to inspire other people to get involved, to make videos of your own, or to try to form a local group of train enthusiasts where you live, because this is just such a fun hobby. All right, that's all the questions. I hope you enjoyed this little Q&A session. As I mentioned, I can do a second one. Just ask your questions in the comments below and we'll make the next video based off of those. I'll leave you some footage with the trains running because I know that's why some of you come here. Just want to see the trains going around. That's fine. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate each and every one of you for stopping by, and I really appreciate all of you who have subscribed. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.